Welcome to the Keeping It Teal podcast. We are the CCU sports podcast that truly keeps it teal 24/7. I'm your host, Hunter Santiago, and I'm joined tonight by my two co-hosts, AJ Moran and Jay Largent. All right, everybody. Obviously, Coastal Carolina walked away with a crazy dub in Norfolk, Virginia against Old Dominion. I was under the impression Jared Guest was starting this game. I feel like almost everybody was under the impression Jared Guest was starting this game. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but didn't Tim Beck announce Jared Guest was the starter for this game? Jay, am I wrong?
That's what I thought so too. But then we go out for the first series and we see Ethan Vasco and we're like, what's up?
Exactly. I remember turning on the game on ESPN Plus and you just see Vasco. I'm like, oh, maybe we're doing some trickery, right? You know, it's like the first couple drives, we're just trying to like throw them off, run a style of offense that like Vasco is just really good at. With obviously, he's very mobile, as we'll discuss later in this podcast. But I was baffled. And then, we get to the third and fourth quarter, and it's still Vasco. And hey, he proved me wrong. I was really confused, with him being the third string quarterback, how he would ball. There was some questionable stuff that we can talk about, but for his first start, it was really solid. But let me tell you, I was confused. And we are definitely going to discuss this during this podcast, but what a game, what a crazy victory, a comeback victory as well. That second half was something to watch. It was definitely insane Chanticleer football. I'm happy that we pulled out a W, but like whew, that last very end of the game, it takes the breath out of you. Those comeback wins at the very end, you're on the edge of your seat. You're like, am I going to be crying here in a few minutes or are we going to be screaming? And I'm telling you, I was screaming. So thank you, Vasco. Thank you, Coastal Football. Thank you, Tim Beck. All right, guys, what did you think about the Old Dominion game? AJ, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so first, hold on. Let me check my pulse here. Because that game almost gave me a heart attack. They're calling us the cardiac Chants, and I couldn't agree more. This is just another one of those games that was just so rough to watch. It was one of those games where it was like every like down like mattered. We talked about the whole quarterback situation, right? I think everybody thought it was gonna be Jared Guest. We even talked about it. We thought it was gonna be Guest. And then that first drive, you saw Vasco out there. They had, commentators were talking about Guest, and they had a Guest graphic up, and then it was like, oh wait, Vasco's in. Everybody was confused. Nobody knew what was going on. Not that we haven't seen Vasco before. Like you said, we've seen him in some special packages and we've seen him here and there, but we didn't see him to that extent. But again, he did all right. I know we had our passing the ball was very rough for the most part. We ran the ball great, especially with him. He's definitely more of a run guy. But like I said, it was the passing the ball that wasn't great. But then again, that last drive when we needed to pass the ball the most and you had to pass, not a lot of time on the clock, you had to move the ball quickly. He found a way to do that. Special teams were good. We had a missed field goal in there, which kind of mattered. It would have made things a little bit less stressful. Defense, they did fine. They did their job for the most part, right? Their job is to keep us in games and keep us around, which they did. On the offense, again, did okay. 458 total yards. Like I said, we ran the ball a ton, and you would think they would have found a way to stop it, but they just, with all the option and all the different guys you have to mark, it made it difficult for them. Some of the other pros, again, low penalties. Again, we've done better here on out in the penalty department. We've moved the ball fairly well, I think, for most of that game. But now on the con side of it, right, again, it was just super iffy all game. We got that rough start. Like we keep saying, you have to start strong. You have to really come out and punch him in the mouth, especially when you're on the road. And it was almost felt like for that game, we were like one step behind. Right? They got the ball first. We got to stop. It was like a 3-and-out or something. We got the ball back, but then we fumbled it back to them. Right? They scored, and we were scoring here and there, but it was just like we were always one step behind them for pretty much the entire game until we found a way to win at the end. Again, the QB situation was interesting to me, and again, it's from our understanding, it's going to be Vasco again this week, and I think we have a little bit of a tougher opponent, so we'll have to see if he can deliver again. And like I said, the passing was rough for most of that game. But Jay, what did you think of this ODU game?
First off, we didn't come out like we've been the past 2 games. I mean, getting down, having to come back from 21-6 is not something we as Coastal Carolina fans want to see, but proud of the team's effort, fight, and then to come back with our third different quarterback in the past 3 games, and all of them have come out to wins. I mean, you can't ask much more of the QB room, the offense, the defense, the whole team in general. I mean, that was just a hard-nosed fought Chanticleer victory on Saturday, and we look to ride it high on Saturday when we welcome Texas State into the friendly confines of Brooks Stadium.
Overall, at the end of the day, it was a very good win. We had a lot of questionable plays and decisions, but that's just been something we've been seeing a lot through the season. So, hey, we got to tighten it up, play some ball, go out and finish a really hard 3-game stretch against 2 Sun Belt opponents and Army. But hey, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, Teal Nation. Let's talk about Texas State in our Texas State preview. So far, as we know, Grayson McCall is still out, potentially maybe back next week. Jared Guest is also still out, and Vasco will be our starter. So we're going to look forward to another, hopefully, really great 4 quarters by Ethan Vasco against a solid Texas State team. Jay, tell me a little bit about Texas State's season so far.
I mean, they're under first-year head coach G.J. Kine. I mean, it's their first bowl eligibility since 2014. They're 6-3 on the year, 3-2 in conference. Had a tough loss against Troy, and to begin the season, they went into a Big 12 school, Baylor, and pulled off the upset. And they're going to be a very tough team as we see any cross-divisional matchup with the Texas State Bobcats. I mean, we're 3-1 all time against them, but they have all been close battles, hard-fought victories, and we're going to need to bring that Saturday afternoon against the Bobcats at Texas State. AJ, what you got?
Yeah, like we were saying here, Coastal 3-1 all time. Texas State 6-3, 3-2 in conference. Again, some things to note here, like the background. Hey, why is there a bowling alley? Well, because Chants for bowling. Just like that, Texas State, the Bobcats again are their first bowl game since 2014. 36 points per game, just over that, 18th in the nation. All that stuff. It's all here to there. I think the biggest thing here to take from that is that these guys are an offensive powerhouse. They come in and they're going to move the ball, and it's going to really test their defense. And like I said, they're a team that we're definitely going to have to watch out for. And I think this is one of those teams that is going to come ready to play, and that they have a lot to prove this season after some tough seasons in the past. And they don't care that they're coming in Conway. They don't care about it. It doesn't matter to them. And they're going to come and they're going to try to take us out of that game as early as possible.
Now the guys have given you a little bit of a preview as to how Texas State's season has been so far leading into Saturday's game. Let's talk about who are some Texas State players to look out for in this matchup. AJ, who do you have?
Yeah, so on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going with number 10 wide receiver Joey Hobart. This season, 804 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. I believe last week he set like a program record in receptions. I think it was like 13 or something. The kid, when you first look at him, you might not think that this guy's a big time impact, but once you see him running routes, he's definitely a guy to watch out for, and he's dangerous on the field. So again, you got to make sure you're covering him and you're staying on him, or he'll make you pay for it. Defensively, it seems to us like we struggle with linebackers defensively, so I'm going number 0, Brian Holloway, linebacker this week. 71 total tackles, but 10 tackle for loss, 2 picks, 2 forced fumbles, right? This guy's a menace. He's all over the field. He's forcing turnovers, right? Forcing balls going backwards, right? Going the wrong way. Stuff like that is going to really disrupt their offense. So we're going to have to watch out for him. And again, this week, didn't have one last week. This week I do. Special pick this week, number 36, kicker, Mason Shipley. Why are we looking out for this kid? Well, I'll tell you why. He's 11 for 11 on the year. He's perfect. Or I'm going to hope that in Conway he misses one, shanks one, something. He doesn't. We ruined that perfect streak with his longest field goal being a 47-yarder. Again, whenever you're a kicker and you're perfect, that's pretty good. Those points matter, especially in big time situations. But Jay, who do you think we have to watch out for this week?
Obviously, on offense, you got to go with QB TJ Finley. I mean, he's an SEC transfer. Played a year at LSU, a year at Auburn. I mean, he's 6'7", 255. I personally think for the Texas State program, he was their biggest offseason acquisition. He makes their team go and offense go. I mean, their first game of the season, he was 22 of 30 for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in their win against Baylor. I mean, if we can't defend and get to the quarterback, he's going to have a field day against our defense. And on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going with Sean Holton, defensive back. He's a senior, a Texas native, came with Coach Khan from University of Incarnate Word, and he's second on the team in total tackles with 60. And we got to keep it away from him because he's a menace in the secondary.
Now that we know a little bit about how Texas State's season has been and some players to look out for on Texas State's team, let's transition over to how does this Coastal Carolina football program beat Texas State on Saturday? Jay, what do you have?
Obviously, I'm going to say again, after ODU, we're going to have to repeat the Marshall game where we started out fast and where it's clicking on all cylinders. And I mean, Texas State, they haven't been good in the past, but this year they are the real deal. And if we don't come to play, we're going to get beat by Texas State on Saturday afternoon in Conway. AJ, what do you got?
Yeah, for me, I feel like a broken record here, but we need, and hence the need, to start hot, right? We need a hot start. The games we don't have a hot start, right? It gets really hairy, really rough. Sometimes we find a way to win, sometimes we don't. So we need a hot start, especially at home, right? Get the fans involved. Get the energy in that place. And again, also you need a strong finish, right? This might be another one of those games that's going to be tight, right? You might have to find a way to win, especially against a tough team. So you're gonna have to again find a way, right? That's it. Just hang around, find a way to win at the end. Stay disciplined and locked in all game, right? No, let's keep penalties down, all that stuff, right? That stuff that just beats you at the end of the day. You wind up beating yourself. But we got a blackout, right, at home in Conway. We need the fans to be a factor here. Military appreciation too, right? We got special lids, all that stuff going on. But I think the biggest thing here, right, for Coastal is can Vasco step up, deliver, and especially throw the football, right? Is again, we saw that he could be a running threat, right? That's big time, especially if you're running an offense like the option offense. That's big time. But he's gonna have to be able to throw the ball in order to keep the secondary honest. So that's gonna be the big thing for me and how to win is whether or not we can do that, and whether or not now the fact that we are going bowling, hence the picture, take some pressure off, right? And hopefully these kids can just go out there and play the ball they know how to play.
All right, now that we know what it takes for Coastal Carolina to beat Texas State on Saturday, let's transition over to the Coastal Carolina football players to keep an eye out for this Saturday on ESPN Plus or at home if you're present for the football game. AJ, who do you have to look out for on Coastal's football team?
Yeah, so on the offensive side of the ball, this one seems pretty obvious. I'm going with Sam Pinckney. Last week, big time factor, 7 catches, 69 yards, nice, and a touchdown. Yeah, and that touchdown was a big one, right? And to add in, right, that was a touchdown to win the game. Little head tap, if you will, to seal the game for us there at the end. There's always one of those receivers that has to step up big time. And like I said, if Vasco can throw the ball effectively, right? Well, we should be able to win this game. And I think, right, Jay, you could tell me here how many straight games was it with catches for him?
54 straight games, and he's going for a new NCAA record on Saturday.
There you go, 54 straight, going for a new NCAA record. We're going with that one, looking to lock that one in. So Sam Pinckney, big time impact. Now the defense side of the ball, another guy that in the beginning of the year was almost a problem, especially with penalties, but has been really good as of late. I'm going with Juan Powell this week. 8 total tackles last game, 5 solo, 2 tackle for loss. He's been a guy that is not your immediate linebacker core. He's more that nickel guy. But when he's on the field, he's really effective. And I'm looking for him again to help stop the run, number one, as you always got to do, and then be a menace in the secondary. But Jay, who do you have this week?
Obviously, on offense, you got to go with Ethan Vasco. I mean, a homecoming game for him. He he brought it when we needed it most and drove us down the field to win the game. And I want to see if he can bring that same output that he did against ODU and bring it to his first home start at Coastal. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to have to go with Michael Mason. I mean, he was a difference maker against ODU. He had 12 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. I mean, he has been a great addition to the secondary as a super senior, and he's putting on for his hometown team in his last season.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes everything you need to know going into this football game on Saturday for the Chanticleers versus the Bobcats. Now let's transition over to another segment, keeping up with the Chants. All right, guys, take it away.
Obviously the volleyball team had a big win tonight, and for the fourth time in the last 8 seasons, they have clinched the regular season Sunbelt championship. And congrats to the volleyball team. They have had adversity this season, and Coach Loswick came in and steered the ship the right way and won another championship, which is the standard of coastal volleyball. AJ, what do you got for the basketball side?
Yeah, so for basketball, this one may be rough, right? I know the get rid of Cliff Ellis as soon as possible is going to come inbound, and I agree with you. But the men's team has started off 1-0 somehow. Now they played Piedmont and they beat them barely. Like I'm telling you, I don't know if you watched it. It's probably a good thing that you didn't. But barely squeaked by what I think they're like Division 3 team, but we beat them by like 2 points. It was not fun. The men's team, I'm going to be honest, I don't have a ton of hope for them this year, but they are in season, and it is coastal, so I will support them as much as I can, even though as hard as it may be. The only thing I do have hope for is that Cliff Ellis is probably done after this year, so that's the one great thing I'm looking forward to. If you want to catch the men's basketball team, they have that Myrtle Beach Invitational going on the 16th through the 19th. I think we start against Wichita State, but then it's like tournament, pool play, round robin type thing. So I don't know if they have everybody ironed out, but I think we start against Wichita State, so we'll see how that one goes. Now on the women's side of things, I have some higher hopes for the women's team. They did fairly well last year. And I think that I'm not saying they're going to be number one in the conference, but they'll at least hang around a little bit this year. They start off 0-1, I believe, because they lost at Georgia Tech. Then they lost at Duke, I think, too, right? Now they play tonight, I think, at South Carolina State. And then you're at South Carolina State on the 15th. And then you have at Furman on the 18th. They're away for a while playing a bunch of teams. Again, they've had a little bit of a rough start, but they're playing two big time programs over there. So if you want to check them out, then go ahead. Like I said, I have higher hopes for the women's team than the men's team. Again, but it's good to support our Chants, as much as possible here now that the basketball season's up and running.
All right. And now that we're done with the keeping up with the Chants segment, ladies and gentlemen, let's transition over to one of the most favorite segments we have over here on the Keeping It Till podcast, a segment that most Coastal Carolina and college football podcasts tend to have, but at the end of the day, doesn't matter. It keeps things fun, and we look forward to it every week. All right. With the leaderboard tied for first, AJ and myself, Hunter, both are at a 15-5 record so far in 3 weeks of the Sunbelt Pick'em, starting about halfway through the season. Last week, AJ had his worst week, going 4-3, and I had my second to best week, back-to-back weeks with only one loss. So it's exciting. I'm glad that, AJ's title belt that goes week to week, as he may discuss at the beginning, is no longer just him. We're sharing it wrapped around each other's hips, regardless if he believes of it that way. At the end of the day, a tie is a tie, and there's no tiebreakers in the pick'ems. Jay has another week of 4-3, not awful, but just about average, sitting at about 12 and sitting at exactly, my apologies, 12-8 on the season. At the end of the day, it's still a winning record. Jay's still doing pretty well. It's up to him this week to get close to an undefeated week. I will say it is tied 28-28 with a minute left in our first game of the pick'ems. So we will not be counting the USM versus ULL picks, but we will go through them just to see what everybody had in general, but they will not count this week. So starting with that, let's go with AJ. Who did you initially have going into this game for that pick?
Yeah, so this week I was going with the Cajuns this week. I feel like this one was kind of one of those no-brainers, just because, this game's actually tight, by the way. But when we're filming this, there's a minute left in the fourth quarter, and we're tied, just like an FYI. But again, in hindsight, right, I was going with the Cajuns this week. just because, at Louisiana, Southern Miss has been, I don't know, you can't really count on them just yet. So I was going with Louisiana this week, but like I said, as the time filming this is actually going to be right down to the wire.
Jay, what about you? What did you initially have in this pick?
Obviously, Southern Miss is having another down year, and you got to go with the Cajuns at home at Cajun Field. So I was going to go with the Cajuns this week.
And I'll close off by saying I was also going to go with the Cajuns, and this will not count towards our record because it's during the game and they have the ball right now, so we could all argue, oh, yeah, we totally picked the Cajuns. But realistically, we all probably were going to anyways. But yes, this one will not count. So we move on to the first pick that will count this week, a big one, the Jamie Chadwell rematch against ODU, the team that gave him nightmares and ruined our undefeated season at homecoming last year after starting, I believe, 6-0. AJ, who are you taking in this major matchup?
You see, you're calling this a major matchup, but I honestly don't see it. We just beat Old Dominion with a third string quarterback at Old Dominion. Like, I don't know what was going right. Yeah, it could be an off game. But again, as much as I hate Liberty, because I'm not a fan of them, not I don't hate them as much as App State, but I'm just not a fan of them just because, right? They're stealing our coaches and and stuff like that. I just don't see, how Liberty loses this one. I think again, Jamie Chow is going to want revenge. He wants this one just a little bit extra. And Old Dominion finds ways to keep games close, but I just think Liberty's the better team here. They know that they have a shot now, especially with the Air Force loss at like that the Group of Five or the best Group of Five team maybe out there. With debates of Tulane and some of these other schools. But I just think that they're going to want it more, and I think that they're just the better team for this. And Liberty at home, I got the Flames in this one.
All right, Jay, what about you?
Obviously, as it pains me, Williams Stadium, Liberty, Caden Salter, that offense, I don't see them losing on Saturday against ODU, and Jamie Chadwell gets his revenge against ODU.
I'm here to pick against the pack. I'm going to be a lone wolf. I've been on a hot streak the last 2 weeks of one loss per week. I'm going to take my one risk this week. I'm telling you right now, ladies and gentlemen, this is factual. I don't have the statistics on hand. You can look it up yourself. But this Old Dominion program is better this year than they were last year. That Old Dominion program last year was not that great, and they came into Conway and beaten undefeated Coastal Carolina with Grayson McCall at the helm. All right, they gave us hissy fits all game long. I personally think while the team could have played better in that game, Jamie Chadwell's coaching definitely played into our downfall during that game. I'm not going to say he was not a great coach. He clearly was. He got our program into the heights that we probably never thought we could ever achieve. But you can't take away the fact that Old Dominion had his number all night long. So if there was any team who could go in and beat a Jamie Chadwell undefeated team to ruin a season, it is Old Dominion, a better Old Dominion, an Old Dominion that just got done playing Jamie Chadwell's former team who, we're on a fairly good run right now, respectively, and hopefully we can continue that run this week against the Bobcats. But yeah, to close out my tangent, I'm taking Old Dominion to ruin another undefeated season of Jamie Chadwell's. And we move on to UConn at JMU, another undefeated Group of Five program. All right, guys, we'll start with AJ again. Who's winning this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, let's go Huskies. Let's go UConn. No, I'm kidding. In all seriousness here, this one might get ugly. UConn, I think, is a one-win team here. Not a rough one for the Huskies, which is surprising, and that's going a little UConn tangent here. But they turned their program around. They were in a bowl game last year. Right? They turned their program around, and now they're having a really rough one this year. So I feel bad for the fellows over at UConn. But again, JMU at home. Let's talk about this JMU program again. Little side tangent here, perhaps, but they are being very adamant about finding a way to work their way into a bowl game or conference championship or something this year. Again, as Coastal fans, I hate that, but I mean, I do have to respect that they're doing a thing or two, right? Their basketball teams are doing well, right? Their football team's doing well. I think their soccer team's doing well. So they're doing some things, and they're really trying to advocate the fact that they should be in a bowl game, they should be in a conference championship. They think it's unfair. At the end of the day, everybody has to sit out that 2 years. It is what it is. We didn't get any special treatment for COVID. They don't get special treatment here. But all that aside, I'm going with JMU this week. Like I said, this one might get ugly, and then all of a sudden, right, JMU then it has two people standing in their way, and it's both the Carolina schools and the Sun Belt. So
Jay, what about you? Who you have?
Obviously, as AJ said, I need to get right. So this week, after Chad Staggs let me down last week against JMU, I'm going with the Dukes this week over UConn, and it's going to be very ugly. And they're going to defend home turf at Bridgeforth Stadium.
And I'll close out this game with a JMU pick. I don't even think I need to really go into it. It's them versus a 1-8 team, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I just don't see this being anything more than a cupcake game for a ranked James Madison. All right, now we move on to App State at Georgia State. AJ, who are you taking?
I'm going with Georgia State this week. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Georgia State's had back-to-back rough losses against two big-time teams, right? James Madison and Georgia Southern. They need this one bad, like so bad. They're going back home in Atlanta, right? They need this win more than anything. And again, anybody but App State, so I'm going with Georgia State this week.
Okay, Jay, who are you taking this matchup?
As Georgia State got blown out last week by JMU, I don't have too much faith in them, so I'm going to go with the App State Mountaineers right here with the win in the ATL over Georgia State.
For me, realistically, I want to take App State as well, just because they did turn their program around last week. However, I do think Georgia State now realizes they're on the fringe of, if they do not win out, they're not if they do not win out their conference games, because they do have a game against LSU coming up. But if they do not win out their conference games, their shot at the East is gone. So I think they're going to come in here at home and pull off a very close, like a 1 to 3 point victory versus the boys in Boone. And I'll kind of leave it at that. Let's move on to Texas State at Coastal, our biased pick of the week per usual. But hey, we're still going to run through it. AJ, who you got?
Yep, going Coastal this week again, short and sweet. But again, it's going to be big time. Ethan Vasco, he's going to have to step up to the plate. He's going to have to be the Heisman runner-up to Jared Guest, or maybe the Heisman favorite. I don't know. Those two are going to be in the Heisman conversation regardless. And Grayson McCall, we're going to have three Heismans. They're just going to have to give out three. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, he's going to have to come up. He's going to have to deliver this week. But give me the Chants.
Jay, who you picking?
Well, Tim Beck's got the Chants rolling this week, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Ethan Vasco gets his second win of the season at home in his first start in Brooks Stadium, giving the Chants big over Texas State.
I'm going to take a page out of the Strut podcast book and say, I think outside of UCLA, this will be our second toughest game of the season. We looked really good against UCLA. Obviously, things could have changed here and there to get us a win in week one. But this is the most complete team we've played since week one, offensively and defensively at this point of the season. So I am worried. I am taking the Chants, but expect this to be a very close game, whether it's low scoring on both ends or high scoring on both ends. I believe this will be one of your chess match games where it is back and forth until the very end, and whoever has the ball last may very well be the team that wins. So keep an eye out on that kind of stat. But all of us are taking our Chanticleers and hoping to continue this hot streak that Coach Tim Beck has been able to push with three different quarterbacks. Let's make that very clear, with three quarterbacks. All right, let's move on to Troy at ULM. AJ, what are we doing?
Yeah, I'm going with my Sunbelt West champion Troy Trojans in this one. Again, ULM is a poverty program. I think they are officially like bottom of the Sun Belt, so it's been rough for them. Troy is the top of the Sun Belt potentially. So I mean, again, no brainer. Doesn't matter who's home. I'm going with the Trojans this week.
Jay, what about you?
Short and sweet, ULM's not good again this year. Give me Gunnar Watson and the Troy Trojans big over ULM.
All right, looks like it's going to be Troy across the board. I just can't pick against Troy right now. 7-2 season. They had a really great season last year where they beat us in the Sun Belt Championship. Do I think they're as good as they were last year? Not really too sure about that, but right now I think it's really hard to pick against them. They look like they're going to be the winner of the West once again, even though I do not have them in my Sun Belt Conference Championship picks as the one to win the West. I do think AJ is pretty right and likely that they will at this point get that chance unless Texas State does some crazy stuff over the next couple of weeks, which I would like to hope not. All right, let us move on to Arkansas State at South Alabama. AJ, what are you cooking with this one?
We're cooking up another battle of mid, baby. Another battle of mid. Two teams that are freakishly mid. These picks are so hard because these teams are just insanely average. But I looked into this one a little bit and it intrigued me because Arkansas State does actually have the better record and is higher in the standings. But I'm going with South Alabama this week. I don't know. I have an inkling to go with the Jaguars this week at home. I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of an interesting pick here. Yeah, let's go with the Jaguars this week. Let's make it happen. Also, a little side note here: the Cajuns and the Golden Eagles just went into overtime, so this is really getting crazy. The Sun Belt West is in complete havoc mode right now because if Louisiana loses, then it's like what I don't know what's going on over there. But yeah, let's go with the Jaguars.
Yeah, if Louisiana loses, my West pick might have just fell through tonight. So we shall see. Jay, who are you taking in this matchup between Ark State at South Alabama?
Obviously, can't go with the Red Puppy, so I'm going to go with South Alabama at home.
And this makes me a lone wolf once more tonight. I'm going with Ark State. I'm telling you right now, their boy Jalen at quarterback is an absolute baller. He's bringing back the team back to life after we came in there and pretty much what we assumed was knocking them out of the race in the Sun Belt of the West with our conference victory over them. But they've been resilient since, and I really think that they are going to be in the running for the West title with a chance to go to the Sun Belt Conference Championship. Because as of right now, they're tied for second with Texas State in the West with a 3-2 conference record. So with a W here, they are very much in the hunt as long as Troy loses one more. So yeah, hey, lone wolf in it, taking the red puppies, Ark State with a W. All right, let's get into our final pick'em for our Sunbelt pick'ems this week. We have Georgia Southern, one of the better teams in the East, versus another fairly decent team in the East who's recently become more so mid since the predictions of them being at the top earlier in the season. Georgia Southern at Marshall. AJ, who are you taking?
I think you're being generous here. Marshall, again, they had a good start, but they have been terrible down the stretch. They are now 1-4 in conference, and 4-5 overall. They are at the bottom of the Sun Belt East at this point. Now, again, this is a team that we were talking about it that we thought might have even had a shot at the East this year, and they just have not panned out that way down the stretch. Again, I do feel bad for the folks at Marshall about that one. However, they are playing my Sun Belt East champion. That still stands in the Georgia Southern Eagles here. Now they have since been surpassed by the Chants actually for the leader of the East again behind James Madison. That whole thing. But they are still in the running as it is. And again, now it puts me in a tough spot because I would never hope for Coastal to lose here, but I do have Georgia Southern winning the East. So it puts me in a tough spot regardless of all that. I'm just going to go with Georgia Southern this week. Again, I like how this team's built. And I think that they're going to be able to handle the herd just fine.
Jay, are you rocking with AJ on this one?
I am obviously as they got embarrassed last weekend by Texas State. I have Georgia Southern bouncing back big and getting the win over Marshall.
I think the boys kind of got the point across with this one. I am also picking Georgia Southern. I do believe, unfortunately, from a coastal standpoint, we definitely don't want to pick Georgia Southern deep down because they are our biggest competition right now. As long as JMU still stays ineligible for the East, they are truthfully our biggest competition when it comes to who's going to win the East since GSU has 3 conference losses currently. But hey, I can't pick against Southern right now. They've been cooking all season long. They have 2 fairly respectable losses. So, hey, we're going with Georgia Southern here. And that now closes out our 4th official Keeping It Teal podcast, now that we end with our Sunbelt Pick'ems for the week. Thank you for listening to our latest episode of the Keeping It Teal podcast. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube, X, Instagram, and Spotify to keep up to date with all things teal. Until next time, good night, Teal Nation.